Everything I know today came from doing. More transactions equals more revenue. Work is where you actually learn.
Princess, welcome.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you. And tell us a bit more about Princess, what you do at Interswitch. What's your role there? Tell us a bit more about that.
Okay, so currently at Interswitch, I work as product leadership and agile governance. So a couple of years, I was tasked with trying to figure out how we can transform the organization. Again, using agile principles. About a year later, they added product to it. So my job is basically to understand how products, principles, frameworks, and how we can apply that in the organization. So that led me on a long journey to figure out what works elsewhere, what frameworks are good. Somewhere in between there, I found the SVPG group. And coincidentally, I think like about a year later, they reached out about the conference, and I was like, oh, wow, this would be great to get them to Nigeria, because I personally felt that after reading through a lot of the work a lot of people have done across the world on products, I felt they had been able to articulate those key things you need to fundamentally focus on. So for me, that's what led me to the Inspire Africa conference eventually.
Brilliant. We're thankful and grateful for having you here today and your contribution as well. So you were on a panel earlier on called Building Great Products is Hard, the Good, the Not So Bad, the Crazy.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about some of the discussion points that came from that panel.
So we try to take a look at, again, using the African context, what we've seen, what has worked, what's fundamentals we wanted people to take home, to make sure when they're building their products, they focus on those things. For us, we felt focusing on understanding your customer is key, customer empathy, because it's who you're building for. Most times you get caught up in, oh, I'm working for a company and I'm trying to get money for the company. But the company is not the customer of who you're building for. So most times it's focused so much internally, and you eventually forget that you're actually building for a customer out there. So we need to spend a lot of time understanding those customers, but you still need to balance it. Obviously, you can't run a company without funds. So you need to balance both understanding the customer and meeting customer needs. So those were some of the key things that stuck out for me.
Brilliant. And as a sort of product leader in the space, in the African market, how do you balance, would you say, sort of innovation with practicality, right? When it comes to launching new products in fragmented or underserved markets?
So I think it's particularly hard in Africa. I say it's hard in Nigeria because it's what I see. I haven't lived in any other African country. And because of the culture we have, I think Abby mentioned it when she gave her talk. She said, Nigeria doesn't have a consensus problem, we have a hierarchy problem. And it's always down to how does this younger generation who has more access to technology and information convince and work with an older generation who understands hierarchy? It's a big challenge to balance today. So for me, those are the things we go against in this part of the world. And it's always trying to, how do you provide data insights that leads the organization to a better outcome? So for me, those are one of the things that I'll pick at.
Brilliant. And so what metrics or KPIs do you use to ensure that your product meets the needs of your customers? I mean, you know, from an Interswitch perspective, is there anything that you kind of share there?
Yeah, so because Interswitch, for example, is a transaction business, we spend a lot of time keeping track of transactions, how many transactions we do. So if your product is transaction-based, it's down to how many transactions are you making per second or per minute. Eventually translates to revenue. More transactions equals more revenue. So as your numbers are going up, you expect revenue to go up. So we keep track of revenue. Because we do a lot of transactions, there's transactional things. So because we also have products that are non-transactional, we then begin to delve into, okay, the features you've created, how do you ensure people are using them? Because sometimes we build stuff and nobody uses it. So we keep track of feature adoption. We track those KPIs down to the features. If it's a platform product, we go down to things like the API success rate. We worry about how many calls we're having to a particular API. So there are many dimensions to it depending on which area of the product you hold. But generally, we worry about transactions, we worry about revenue, and then the other product metrics, usage, how many customers came on board. We try to do things like cohort analysis to say, okay, for the month of October, 20 people came in. Are those 20 people still transacting after a month, or they've all dropped off and we have a new batch of 20? So again, it just gives you a sense from different dimensions as to how you keep track of your product. But fundamentally, because we're a transaction processing company at heart, transactions is what we...
key. That's the number one.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And I think a lot of the conversation that has come out today is around how do we foster sort of continuous learning and innovation within product teams, and it'd be good to understand sort of, you know, what Interswitch does in terms of fostering that kind of continuous learning piece, and your experience as well.
Well, so funny fact is I like to learn and learn again from people, because it helps me to leapfrog. I don't have to make the same mistakes they make. So I've spent the last 2 years trying to curate content again for the teams to say how do we get the best access to training. But for me, training is not enough, because it's knowledge you get, but the bigger part is how do you apply it.
And a lot of it.
Yes, it's in the doing. Learning, yes, right? Everything I know today came from doing. So even though I learned it, it didn't make sense until I did it, and I saw what worked and what didn't work. So for me, it's how do you create that within work, so that work is where you actually learn. So for me, I've spent time to curate content. Again, I applied the same product management principles to learning too. Who is the person that needs to learn? Because I know some people are new, I know some people are more advanced. So the training content we created for advanced is slightly different from new people. So again, just applying product management is find training content, create approaches where people can practice. And I really like what they're doing with the PLA. I feel fundamentally the doing is what's missing. We have a lot of take this, get a certification, but you never built anything before. It's the how do you work with a team, is those things that really matter to me. So it's going down and create opportunities for people to do and reflect on it, and not just do and walk away. No, it's what did we learn from this process. So taking our time in between to learn is critical. So there are quite a few materials out there, like the SVPG course, but it's not quite affordable for everybody. So you can find a few things here and there, but it's doing that really matters.
And I think that's one of the things I quite like about this. I say quite like, I like a lot about this conference, right? Is that they're bringing the training and the coaching elements, which is quite rare. We don't really see that in conferences. You might have the odd breakout session or the odd workshop, but actually dedicating, you know, 3 days, the majority of the time really to really coach and train is I think is phenomenal. And also to your point, right? Yes, SVPG, great to have that knowledge and that expertise, and you know the phenomenal things that they've built over there, and sort of sharing some of that here. And I think it's up to the product stars within the African market to kind of take elements of that, but apply it in a way that suits the market. Brilliant. So final question. What emerging technologies are you most excited about, and how do you see them impacting product leadership in Africa?
Obviously, it's quite interesting now.
Did you see the AI panel earlier?
Yes, I did. For me, AI helps solve some problems, but in Africa, our problems are deeper than AI. Yeah, it can help alleviate a few things here and there, maybe faster. A developer may not need to spend a lot more time doing something because AI can do it, so he can then maybe spend more time doing discovery. There are many things. But I feel AI is one of those things like the internet that is pretty big. I'm excited about it. I can tell it, give me a presentation, and it does it for me. I'm like, wow. That was beautiful. I think animation is going to be a lot easier. So I like animation, but I find it hard to spend time to start doing all the extra stuff. If I can just get a tool and I can describe what I want and it can give me the animation, I'd love it. I teach in church and I teach children 3 to 4. And sometimes I just want to create content for Sunday school. I feel those kinds of things will be a lot easier now with technology and AI, because I can tell it what I want. Give me a girl playing in the field who is Black African with Afro pops. Exactly, that children can relate to in Africa. So I think AI is big. I hope it can sustain. I know there's a lot of cost going into it at the moment, but again, just with anything, just like compute is cheaper now. Hopefully, as time goes by, things will be a lot cheaper and more accessible. So AI is it for me now.
Yeah.